Hi everyone, I'm Stan Mallow. Welcome to Paranormal Yakker. My guest today is Dr. Irena Scott. I'll be talking with Irena about her book, Aliens and the Apocalypse, The Meaning of Alien Messages. Irena has an extensive and impressive academic background and has worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency. She also served on the MUFON Board of Directors, co-edited 8 symposium proceedings, is a MUFON field investigator, has been a state section director for Ohio MUFON, was a founding member of the Mid-Ohio Research Associates and its journal editor, and has published UFO material in many books and journals. Dr. Irena Scott, welcome to Paranormal Yakker.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
I would like to start this interview off by asking you the $65 million question, or with inflation, I guess I should be saying the $165 million question, one that I'm sure is on the mind of just about everybody on planet Earth. Are we, Irena, in the end times?
I don't know, but we've certainly manufactured the ability to be in end times because we can blow ourselves up.
Regretfully, that is true. You, Irena, believe it is important for us to understand our past because it gives us clues about solving today's problems. That makes a lot of sense. However, as I learned from your book, our past, which most of us think we know, has been distorted or is outright wrong. This is especially true of the role females, not males, had in the creation and advancement of humankind and civilization. How did the historians get it so wrong, and why do you think it's important that the record be set straight and that females be given the credit they deserve for our very existence?
I think it's important because we're solving our problems in methods that make our problems worse. In general, we have the idea that we were formed by what you call in the literature male killer apes, that the apes came down from the trees and the males started making spears and chopping up stones and killing animals and everything. And that's what created us. And the reason that idea is so widespread is because a number of books, such as A Naked Ape and Out of Africa and all that, and the only evidence they had was that they found some human bones and some animal bones together. And so they decided that the humans killed the animals and we went on from there, even though there wasn't a whole lot of logic in that because they didn't know why the bones were together to start with. And it could be accident, or maybe the baboons were eating the people, for all we know. A number of really widespread books were written on this subject of killer apes and the alpha male and everything. And they were very popular. And now everybody in the world thinks that we were created by male violence. And the way to solve all our problems is to kill somebody or make bigger bombs. At the present time, we're also UFOs and UAP and that sort of thing is in the news too. The government actually just a very tiny bit said, well, maybe, all these millions of people that are seeing things, and even airplane pilots and highly intelligent people and leaders and everything else see UFOs. Well, the government said, well, maybe everybody that sees something isn't totally crazy, which a lot of people knew to start with. And a lot of people thought maybe we're not the only life in the universe anyway. I mean, it'd be sort of illogical if we were. It's in the news because the government just kind of mentioned it. Plus, there's a lot of sightings. A lot of people are having all kinds of things happen to them. But they're not what you would expect with the killer ape idea. Because when we go to another planet, the only place we've been is the moon so far. We're wearing big men with spacesuits and breathing apparatus and everything, planting flags and all that. Usually if a more advanced group of people take over a less advanced, there's conquistador activity where they steal everything and kill people. But in the case of the possible aliens here, what we see aren't what we would think, because a lot of the aliens look kind of female. They are female-sized in general, like E.T. and the Greys and the ones from Close Encounters of the First Kind and everything like that. And for example, in Roswell, New Mexico, which is kind of where the idea of that UFOs were spaceships piloted by aliens, that's sort of where the idea started, and it's probably least biased. Well, they have models of aliens, and they look very, very female. And so I was saying that maybe besides all the messages we get, that maybe that's a message in itself, that we should be more attuned to females, and that females had a lot more to do with Earth life than what the current literature says.
You state that in addition to a number of other areas influenced by females, early human matriarchy is where our intellect began. Writing was woman's invention. The alphabet began in the matriarchy, as did mathematics, and that civilization itself was founded in the matriarchy. Can you, Irena, expand on any of that?
They say now that there was no such thing as a matriarchy. We were always controlled by killer apes or alpha males or all that. Well, they're studying animals, and mammals are what we are. In recent studies of mammals, they're finding that's not the group. I mean, they're not a male harem. If there's a group of animals with a male in it, he's not the controller leader. For example, a lion group, they always show the male lion standing over a zebra, top predator and all that. If you think about it, there's a lot more zebras than there are lions, and the lions are in danger. The zebras are doing fine, so you can't really say that they're the top predators controlling everything. But even in lions, which are carnivores, the lion pride is a group of females, and they're not a group harem collected by males, like related females, like grandmothers and great-grandmothers and daughters. And the males are they're the organizers and the permanent members and the leaders. The males come and go. I mean, one will be big and fight off the others, and then pretty soon it's gone and the next one comes in. They're not the leaders, and it's not their harem. And most groups of mammals, which is what we are female groups. And so I was saying that it's very, very likely that humans start out the same way that every other animal did, and that we shouldn't say we're different from everybody else. There's also archaeological evidence of this. For example, if you go back to the very first stone carvings and things that people did, well, they're females. And if you go back to cave drawings, things like that, they have a lot of evidence now that these were done by females, and that the people living in caves are females and young, such as lions. Lions keep their babies in a den for a while until they grow up, and probably the same thing could have happened to them. And the drawings might be females telling their kids about what animals are there and drawing them, instead of males having some kind of magic hunting sketches as presented. So I was saying that there's evidence that human intellect came in that way, because the first art for people have been here about 200,000 years, and most of the time, most of the art has been of females. That's where people began to think and have human consciousness, was where if you can draw a picture or make a carving, you have a picture of what you're doing. And you can symbolize a person by making a carving or something. And I was saying that maybe human consciousness developed in groups of females, and it was basically learning how to use symbols and developing the ability to think in symbols rather than the killer ape.
Alien astronauts in movies, TV shows, and books are generally depicted as burly males. You point out, and you just gave examples of it, Irena, that both alien appearance and ancient art show a high proportion of females, and that they are slender. What are the chances of Netflix or somebody coming up with a movie and setting that record straight and having the female astronauts?
I'm hoping to introduce a new idea here that
Many theories abound about creation itself and how we came to be. Different religions have their own take on it. However, it appears there's a common denominator. The deity came from the skies. Could you, Irena, share one or two other stories about how various religions depict their creator?
I think originally, and in most of the time humans are here, the creator has been a female. And she literally created people because she gave birth to whoever they were honoring. And until maybe about 5,000 years ago, the creator and the deity was a female. Then when males started taking over, which was basically by the sword, not by the pen, they've introduced the deity and revised the deity as a male. But the male created everybody by supernatural ways or different stories, whereas the original deity may have been people kind of honoring their past ancestors and that sort of thing as a creator.
A number of people associate the end times with predictions of signs in the skies. And they cite the high number of UFOs, UAPs being reported all over the world as proof of that prediction. Is there, Irene, any validity to that?
It's hard to say from the past because the idea of UFOs as spaceships with aliens came in at about 1947, but there may have been orbs and things in the sky from way back, but nobody had a name for them. So sometimes they're in art and sometimes described in words, but nobody knew what they were. They didn't have a real name. So they would say, well, this is a deity coming down or something like that. Now they explain some of it by ancient astronaut theory, but only since 1947 have we been aware and had a name for those things flying around the sky. So there seems like a lot more because people have a name for it. And the government has repressed everybody until very, very recently and said, if you see anything flying around the sky, it's not there. You're crazy. Even if you're a college professor or a pilot or something, you're crazy. But now it's sort of accepted a little bit. And so people can report. And so there's more reports of it. Maybe there's more activities too, but it's hard to compare with the past when nobody knew a name for it and there wasn't a place to report it.
When it comes to contactees, is there any rhyme or reason as to why alien beings choose certain people to contact and not others?
I think a number of people do report it, and these are perfectly sane, normal people. They're not in the insane asylum. They always say, if you see a UFO, you're drunk. Well, if you get drunk, you don't necessarily see UFOs anyway.
Quite a few contactees have been given messages by the alien beings they encountered. What, Irena, are those messages, and what is the meaning of those messages?
Hardly ever, if ever, do the messages say, make bigger bombs, kill more people, slaughter people, take the blood and eat their gore and everything like that. There's almost nothing like that. Most of the messages are be kind, look out for other people, preserve the earth, don't destroy the earth, and that sort of thing. They're all more or less peaceful, cooperative. But some of them are the end times, that there's going to be a horrible, horrible turmoil and earth life ending or human life ending or things like that. So far it hasn't. They've always presented the end times as something external, like a meteor coming in and slaughtering us like the dinosaurs or volcanoes going off or the weather or something like that. They've never presented it as us doing it to ourselves. And that's might be a big problem now. We can do it to ourselves. And so that's different from all the predictions. So we kind of have control over what we do to ourselves.
Is there anything mankind can do to avoid the apocalypse? And should there be one, is there anything we can do to survive it?
I was trying to do my little part by saying maybe our past is not what we think we are, and we're solving our problems the wrong way. And we stop having wars, but it's so ingrained in the idea that wars solve everything, that's a big deal, is very, very ingrained. And the killer ape and all that is just what everybody knows. And it would be hard to subtract that idea, but it may be a very destructive idea.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yakker want to buy Aliens and the Apocalypse, the meaning of alien messages, how, Irena, can they do that?
It's on Amazon.com. And also I have a webpage, irenascott.com, and I list my books, and all you do is click on a book and it goes right to Amazon.com where you can order it. So you can do it either way, or through Flying Disc Press by Philip Mallow.
Dr. Irena Scott, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yakker. As always, I very much enjoyed yakking with you.
Well, I very much enjoyed yakking with you too, and thank you for having me.
Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yakker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. So that you don't miss any upcoming shows, be sure to subscribe to my free YouTube channel. To do that, just press the subscribe button on your screen.